Joe, congratulations on Abraham's Boys. Um, Very excited to chat with you about it. A short story, so much packed into it. Tell me what inspired you to write it.
Money and desperation. You know, the at the time I wrote the short story 23 years ago. And at the time I was a failed novelist. I had written four novels that no one wanted to buy. And I just about given up on becoming a novelist. But I knew I could write a short story. I had written some short stories that sold to little magazines, and then some of those short stories won prizes or got in best of collections. And most of them had a supernatural element, And so I feel like I had figured out how to write a short story. There was a Hugh Jackman film about Abraham Van Helsing hitting theaters, and an editor named Gene Cavalos thought that made it a good time to do a collection of stories about Van Helsing, not attached to the movie, but just sort of drafting off the publicity around the film. And when I read about this collection getting put together in Writer's Digest, and I thought, I'm getting in that collection. I got to get in that collection because I knew it would be a decent paycheck, but more importantly, it would have a great publisher behind it. I think it was published by Signet, national distribution, and it would help me get more work. Um, so I wrote a story about Abraham Van Helsing because that was the assignment. And then the question was, what do I have to say about him? Do I have anything interesting to say about him? And I guess the thing that I got thinking about is, what would he be like if he was your dad? When you think about the awful things he's seen and the hideous things he's had to do, who was Van Helsing after the events of Dracula? And what would it be like if this man was raising you as his kid? And so that's the basis of the short story.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to have that much depth as far as just generational trauma and just
Yeah,
the anxiety of being in that role. Because if you think of maybe a soldier or something like that, of that PTSD, now it's carrying on
right.
to his wife, his children. It was very well thought out. And what did you think of Titus Welliver's portrayal as Abraham? Because I thought he was terrifying.
How lucky were we to get him in the film? I mean, it's an extraordinary performance, really unique and memorable. There's a moment late in the picture where he does some stuff emotionally that's just so stunning and so satisfying and just absolutely chilling, absolutely gripping and absolutely chilling. It's a really unforgettable performance from an actor at the top of his game. Um, so and I'm delighted that the film exists. I have said a few times that, the picture is in very Hitchcockian. It feels like a
Mhm.
1950s Hitchcock picture. It's the suspenseful sequences are built the same way that Hitchcock built his most suspenseful sequences. I'm thinking about pictures like Vertigo and Psycho. But then there's this other stuff in the film that looks like a John Ford Western. And I like that too. The original short story was, in one sense, about being an immigrant to America and trying to figure out, the new country and how to belong there and how to be there. And Max has this accent. He feels like he sounds like, a Bavarian farm boy. He thinks his accent makes him sound stupid, and he feels like, very out of place, like he does not belong. And I think that there's a little bit of that in the film as well. This feeling that they haven't connected with they haven't managed to blend, they haven't managed to connect. They're outsiders. They're settling in the American West. And that I feel like those are classic American Western themes. My story wasn't set in the West, but I feel like those are classic, it's just the beginning of the 20th century. Max, Rudy, and the Van Helsings have come from abroad. What are they going to make of this new alien country, rattlesnake
Yeah,
country?
yeah, it's such a wild time period to really put them in because so many things are changing, but yet I mean, especially Abraham is so stuck with the past. Well, you would think that the kids are looking to the future and to the fact that they're in California, and it's kind of a clash of culture as well as just a bunch of other things. I thought it
They're
was
trying to hide out. They don't want to be found, So in that way, they're almost like doomsday preppers. They're like
Mhm.
hiding out there in the American West and look in the front yard. What's coming? The railroad. The future finds you. You can try to hide. Van Helsing is trying to hide, not just from vampires, but connection, civilization, society, anyone who might judge him. He doesn't want to be judged, and most of all, he's hiding from the future, but there's no place to hide from it.
Do you feel that there was that maybe it would have been a little bit different if you could try to but then again, like how do you try to explain, what I've done as my career to your kids?
I mean, there is a moment when in the movie when Van Helsing does something terrible, and then he turns to Max and says, "See what you made me do?" And that's a villain's line. That's a chilling line. When someone turns to you and they're covered in blood and says, "Look what you made me do." That unwillingness to take ownership of, one's most savage actions. That's pretty unsettling stuff.
Yeah, lots of gray areas, lots of discussion that you can have on the characters. Joe, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me and chatting with me about it. I thought it was very, very well done and obviously based off of your great story. So thanks.
That's very kind. Manny, thanks for talking to me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Take care.